Hi Sablechicken, thank you for your video response. It's Analogy Central again. If you were in telephone communication with someone who was living in a town where they were quite content, they weren't doing anyone any harm, and they were surrounded by desert, would you advise them to leave? That's the kind of situation that I'm in with you. If you're content with your beliefs, if they cause you nothing but pleasure, if when you go to church on a Sunday, your pastor does not advise you which way to vote, if you're prepared to leave the teaching of evolution to the science class and intelligent design to the religion class, then I would say stay put. If you have doubts about the validity of your religion, and having looked at your profile, I don't think you have too much doubt, it's difficult. If I were to try and persuade you to go out into that desert, I would be instigating something that's going to cause you pain. But if you want to alter the teaching of evolution, or you're going to allow your pastor to tell you which way to vote, or if you ever allow a child to be threatened with hell, then I say you get some sandals and you go for a long, long walk, and it's going to be painful. There's no two ways about it. It's going to take time and effort on your part, and that thing which gives you such a lot of beauty in your life is going to crumble. If you really look into science, it will crumble. So the question is, are you contacting me to get some pointers about science, or are you contacting me to persuade me that, to my mind at least, 2 + 2 is 3.5? It's hard to know what your motivations are. I'll assume they're entirely innocent and that you're quite curious, and that you want to learn about science for science's sake, rather than wanting to learn about science to shake anyone's belief in science. That's a mistake if you think that, because you can't shake someone's belief in something when it has such a firm foundation. Generally speaking, we atheists prefer a bookshelf of books, preferably several bookshelves of books, rather than just one book. Any science book that I read that has any fact in it at all, if the fact is suitably interesting, I will seek out other sources to check that fact out. It's very important to me. The truth is more important to me than what I believe. So, if you're feeling like going for a walk across the desert, there are many routes out of town across the desert. I can only speak about the route that I know, that I've shared with a few people, and that eventually they came to enjoy it. To me, the only place I know to start is where I started. So I'm going to repeat myself a little bit in something that I said in another video. But if you want to start out, that, to me, is the best place to start. Now, is the truth worth reading a book? I think you'd probably say it was, but how about reading another book? If you don't want to read a book, available in your DVD stockists is that. Now, that may be an even better place to start, because You get music with this. You don't get music with a book. Plus you get Uncle Carl in his finest. How much time have I got left? I've got plenty of time. I notice that you've got the flagellum clip up in your favourites. And I think the clip is 1 minute 26 seconds longer. I'm sure if you went looking you could find longer clips about that particular, what you would call a controversial subject, but what we call a daft idea. There's a video on YouTube by Ken Miller. It's in my favourites, buried quite deeply, but you should be able to find it. It's over an hour and a half long. And this is the chap who took on the rather challenging task of being an expert witness in the Pennsylvania schools case, when they tried to get intelligent design into the school. And Ken Miller proved to the judge's satisfaction, and probably to the satisfaction of everyone in the courtroom, that intelligent design is not science, any more than let there be light is science. Intelligent design has no weight behind it. Intelligent design in a classroom would consist of 3 or 4 sentences, and then the rest of the time throughout that semester and for the rest of the schooling would be science. Intelligent design can't be taught in a classroom because there's nothing to teach. Sorry if I've dragged you out into the sand a bit, but you've got to decide whether you want to go for a long, long walk from a town that is comfortable and secure across barren sand. And it will seem barren to begin with. But if you keep going, which I'm always telling people to do, you'll see some trees on the horizon somewhere down the line. And there's water there. There are no promises of an afterlife. There are no promises of punishment for the evil. There's none of that. But if you got there and you got yourself a seat and sat down, you wouldn't be confronted by television programs shaking your faith, or by passers-by thinking that you were slightly wobbly in the head. So that's the trade-off. You would lose the promise of divine love, but you would find in its place a much richer story, a logically coherent story from beginning to the present day. And really it's just down to a question of, is your God the God of truth? We all know he's supposedly the God of love, but is he the God of truth? Because if he's the God of truth, then no matter how hard, logically speaking, you go into science, he shouldn't be damaged if he's the truth. Now, I've got about a minute. One thing I would say is that if you do get into science, seriously into science, to the point where your current beliefs no longer have a place in the logical part of your brain, please don't think that it's cold. Now again, I've said this before, it's not cold. There's something very profound about the story that science tells us about the universe. Something, I mean, how long we got? 30 seconds, okay. Copernicus took us from the centre of the solar system, and evolution took us away from any divine plan. But the most complex object that we know of in this universe is the human brain. feels quite nice when you really accept our place in all of this.